In this screencast, we're going to be looking at the Share Investment Folio. This is the first folio you would have experienced this year in Year 12 Maths Apps, and it may be slightly different to the folios that you've seen before. With the Maths Apps folio, you'll find that it is very open-ended in the way in which it pictures the question, and you need to be able to solve it. There'll be a minimum kind of requirement that you'll need to kind of get you over that CB mark. Anything more than that is where you actually have to investigate the maths and analyse it very carefully. Otherwise, you might find that you're actually not really doing a project that has a lot of depth in it. So let's have a look at the Share project, which is now sitting inside your Google Drive. And you can have a look at the task sheet and read through it. It's really important to read through the entire task sheet when you first get it. And it looks like this. You'll see a whole lot of information at the top, a few requirements as you go down, the facts with the minimum possibilities and a couple of areas for extensions. It's really important that you read the entire task before you start it and before you jump in. Otherwise, you might find yourself going down the wrong kind of pathway. So let's kind of break this down and have a look at the key bits of it so you can understand what's going on. As I said before, the task actually is set to you in a kind of an open-ended way and starts off with two quotes. One comes from Warren Buffett, another one comes from Patrick Morris. And the Warren Buffett one is basically saying that you really just need to be careful about investing in really good stocks and then put your money in them. You don't have to worry about them too much, just really good things. The other one is looking about the timing of buying and selling. So let's have a look at some of the key words that are sitting in here. For the one for Warren Buffett, it says you don't want to focus on when, you want to focus on what. So in this quote, he's saying you really want to focus on having good quality stocks in your portfolio, and then the rest of it will take care of itself. The other one is quite a good one because it's talking about people who'd like to make predictions in the share market and looking at how to make a profit or a loss, and they can have all these clever tricks. And there's a sentence right towards the end, or a phrase towards the end that says, no better than a random chance. And what it was saying is that all these other ways of choosing things is no better at just randomly choosing when to buy and sell your shares to be able to make your money. Now they're kind of contradictory, those two kind of phrases, but it's interesting to think about in terms of maximising your returns on the share market. So that's kind of like your background information for the task. So let's look at the issue and the task. Sid and Manfred are chatting to each other, and Sid is saying to Manfred that it's easy to predict the share market and make money, whereas Manfred said that is why no one pays attention to sloths. Who is right? So in one case, Sid is saying I can predict what's going to happen in the market, I can maximise my returns, and Manfred saying this is not true at all. So who's right out of those two? Is there a way of being able to predict the market and make it some money, or is it just completely up to a random choice and it doesn't really matter what you do when? The key parts of this part of the thing, and the question is this: is it possible to devise a method that will maximise your returns, and is it possible to predict the trends in the market? Those are the two things that you're trying to solve. In this task, you're going to use your skills and knowledge of Maths App students to demonstrate if you can or if you can't devise a plan or a method that will ensure that you make money on the share market or maximise your returns on the share market. So you can see it's quite an open-ended task, but in the next part of the task sheet, when you read through it, you'll be able to see the bits that you'll need to pay attention to be able to make sure that the task and you actually answer the task very, very carefully. So the next part gives you a couple of facts, and these are a bit of hints about which way to go with the project. So a couple of facts are you can spend $40,000. You can buy and sell shares as many times as you want, and you may want to limit yourself to a 10-year time frame, and you need to take into account that you're going to have taxation there as well, and your taxation rate is 42%. So basically now it's hinting at you to say, well, maybe you should buy and sell some shares to see actually if you can maximise your return on the share market. So let's have a look at the basics, what you kind of should do as a minimum. You need to be really carefully, you need to carefully design your folio, your investigation to solve the scenario. Your introduction will need to carefully state what you're trying to solve. So this is one of the trickiest parts of the project, is actually writing down in introduction what you're going to solve and how you think you're going to do it. Let's have a look at some of the minimums. Firstly, having that money there, the $40,000, is a hint to be buying and selling shares over a variety of time periods. So you might look at short-term versus long-term investment and see if one of those methods actually brings you better returns. You'd need to take into account calculating your capital gain or your loss, or your profit or your loss. Calculate any tax that you've got payable so you can work out your actual gain at the end. And then you can discuss market trends over that time that you've held the shares. All right, so that's the first thing. You might want to just buy and sell some shares, do it well, spend your $40,000. You might want to buy them over a long term, say 10 years, short term, say 2 months, and compare the two. Then you've got something to go from. You can say, if I just buy and sell shares from here, I can make money. If I buy them short term, I can't make money. Or you might find it's completely around the other way, depending on the shares that you choose and depending on your timeframes that you choose as well. The other possibility is to stretch yourself. Once you've done the minimum, once you've got that nailed and it's really good, this is what you can look at doing. You might want to look at moving averages. Can you use the moving average for the shares that you've bought to maximize when you buy, when you sell, to maximize your returns? So that's something very well worth indicating, so you know how to use a moving average graph. Can you look at share indices and see if they indicate when to buy and sell? What about dividends? Do they actually add more money to your folio? And can you actually make more profit out of that? And therefore, can you prove that if you get dividends as well, actually is very good for your investment and how much money you make? What about dividend imputation? How does that work with your tax rate of 42%? Is it better for you? Is it not better for you? How does that work? You might also want to investigate inflation. Even though your shares might have gone up by a certain percent, have they matched inflation? So therefore, are shares a good investment, or is there another investment out there like property or just money in the bank that is better than shares? That's another thing worth investigating to be able to work out whether Sid or Manfred are correct. You also might want to look at your yield and whether that helps you make really good decisions. And are there other investment strategies that you could demonstrate really simply that show who is right or who is wrong with this task? So once again, the task is up to you. Start with the minimums, think about the things that you can show and prove in the other bits, and then do them. In your write-up, you have to be very clear and concise about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And in your analysis at the end, you've got to be able to tell the person reading it why these things work better. You've got to be able to explain and interpret the mathematics and then apply it to, if you were going to do this in real life, what would you do? So it's a fairly open-ended task, but you could break it down to be a good structure that you can solve. Everyone's task will be slightly different. Everyone will solve it slightly differently. And it's really important for you to work out the best way for you to solve this so you can maximize your returns.